the zoning board of appeals to the audience. The city has adopted a set of zoning ordinances. If a property owner applicant wishes relief from a portion of the zoning ordinance, an appeal from the administrative decision, or the interpretation of the zoning ordinance text, state law provides an avenue of review through the zoning board of appeals. Unlike decision by the planning commission that must be approved or can be overturned by the city commission, the decision by the board of zoning appeals is final. There is no review or opportunity for overturning by the city commission. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act provides that section 606(3), an appeal for the decision of the zoning board of appeals shall be filed within 30 days after the zoning board of appeals issues its decision in writing, signed by the chairperson, if there is a chairperson, or signed by members of the zoning board of appeals if there is no chairperson, or within 21 days after the zoning board of appeals approve the minutes of its decision. The court may affirm, reverse, or modify the decision of the zoning board of appeals. The court may make other orders as justice requires. That being said, I have minutes from 6/5 that we need to approve. And I have one thing with that is that I'm listed as present and also absent.
I think that the entire attendance on that is incorrect. So if I can just change for the record, Chairman Bob Mars was here, Tom Winkelman, Randy Smith, Roger Crabtree, and Elena Heisinga was present. The members that were absent were Vice Chairman Brian Bowling, Patrick Nolan, Craig Teets, and Scott Funke, correct?
Okay.
I just realized in saying that, but I have no idea how to say your last name. So
That's
I
fine.
practiced that.
Okay.
Sorry.
With-
Another correction.
Okay.
The motion is not actually on the table. If the right people go in there.
Oh,
Okay, faulty motion sheet is for.
so I have.
So we have two edits and subject to final review.
Yeah, it's got the wrong ordinance number.
Yeah. I wonder if I just. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve as corrected.
Okay, we have a motion by Roger to approve the corrected minutes.
Support.
Support by Tina. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay, we have, I'm sorry, I thought I turned the whole thing off. A section for public comment. Anyone who wishes to express any concerns regarding issues related or non-related to this case may come forward and
I'm the property owner across the street, 3384 Remembrance Road
okay,
Northwest.
this is just for non-related. We haven't
Oh, I'm
gotten into
sorry,
that
I
yet.
thought it was for related.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay,
It's-
sorry.
Yeah, so. Okay. The applicants, Michael Smith and Brad Lawrence, on behalf of owner Bosworth Builders, Tiny Giant Leasing, have applied to establish that a proposed use of a small batch beer brewing ingredient and beer packaging and storage, commercial sales, and future on-site sampling is similar to the principal uses permitted in and compatible with the intent of Z3 zoning district under section 94, 178B, 10 regarding the subject lot at 3393 Remembrance Road, zoned C3, highway commercial and A, single-family residential. The applicant has presented facts regarding the proposed use on the application materials included in pages 7 through 13 of the application. Is there anything you'd like to add, Dan?
Yes, thanks. So, hello, everybody. Thank you for just a couple people in the audience. Thanks, ZBA, for making it tonight. I will run through my fact-finding here, and I will caution everybody that there is some fact-finding I did pretty late in the game here. Some details are shaking loose, and I did talk to the applicant about some findings that are going to change my recommendation, and I'll explain why. And we may end up with the same result, but we should go through the right process to make this all well understood by everybody. So let me go through what I know about this site, the site plan that's being proposed, the use that's being proposed, and I'll start with the role of the ZBA on a request like this, and then we'll get to the site aspects of their proposed use. So the context here is that you're on Remembrance Road by Ripens and Evert. This is an old plat called the Leonard Garden Home Sites plat. This lot is actually inside of that old platted boundary, so it's sort of a mix of these interesting uses on Remembrance Road that are very close to residential, but built for sort of motor mall style development. The zoning is called highway commercial, as is a lot of these small commercial lots along Remembrance Road that have built up over time. Everything from the there's auto shops, there's a couple of different tenants that have moved in and out. There was a tanning salon a few doors down, a restaurant a few doors down. So it's a mix of different use types that all fall into that commercial category. They're all really close to residential backyards. So that kind of lays the context for what we're talking about here. This plat was approved back in the 1920s, so it goes back quite a ways. So that's the site we're looking at, and what is the ZBA's role in the review of this site tonight? So as we learned at relearned at the training a few weeks ago, ZBA has a few roles. One of them is to hear and decide appeal from administrative decisions. One of them, I'm going to jump down, is to hear applications for variances where you have a land use that either because it's got something too big or in the wrong place, or it's just a use that's completely zoned incorrectly, you are actually reviewing breaking the zoning law. That is not the way that I've interpreted this proposal to date. The way I've interpreted this proposal to date has been this yellow highlighted role you have, which is interpreting the zoning ordinance text and map. So what the judge similar application does is where we don't define a use specifically, the ZBA has a role in evaluating whether that use fits within the intent of a certain zoning district and is similar to the other uses permitted in that zoning district. So that is the role that I have determined so far that the ZBA has in this case leading up to tonight. So what is this use? It's what they call small batch beer brewing and related ingredient in beer packaging and storage, commercial sales of beer, and future on-site sampling. So a small tap sampling station that I think the applicant can help describe a little better than I can. Small batch in this definition, according to the applicant, means one batch produces basically one 42-gallon barrel. So a much smaller production operation that than you'd have at a larger brew pub or brewing operation like Founders. And it is larger scale than home brewing. The floor area is being proposed for this building, which, by the way, I did not mention this in the last slide, but this building has been occupied in the past by Bosworth Builders, and it was a laboratory, I believe, before then. So it's had more of a sort of warehousing industrial type use history that's now being proposed for something a little bit different. But the way that the floor plan in this building is being proposed to be used is about 1,000 feet of 1,000 square feet of production and packaging, 1,170 square feet of sales and service area, 500 square feet of storage, and 300 square feet of office space. And these square footages may change over time as the use evolves. There's a list of specifics with this plan. You can see the specific uses here: brewing of small batch artisan beer, selling of, this was a misinterpretation. I'm going to skip that second bullet point. Packaging and storing of beer, selling of beer, commercial sales for off-site consumption, small market style consumer experience, similar in scale to some similarly sized bakeries and meat markets, potential future on-site sampling and service. The occupancy is expected to be about maximum of 30, and the operating hours are going to be different for the commercial side from the production side, from 12 to 7 Thursday through Friday for the commercial sales and operating hours, 10 to 5 for the production part of what they do. 10 to 5 also on Saturday for sales and commercial, 8 to 7 Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for production. They anticipate about 14 vehicles being on the site at once. The exterior usage will be limited to loading and unloading, removal of spent grains, and customer parking. And the largest truck they anticipate being on the site is a 26-foot long box truck, and there will be on-site security as well. So that's a lot of the details of the use. Some comparison sites that they've linked to in their application are a brewing company out of Virginia called Aslan Brewing, Nantucket Bakery in Grand Rapids, sort of that, what neighborhood is that, Andrea? Heritage Hill, East Hills, whatever that is, off of College and Michigan, and Sobey Meats right across the street. So I think the idea here is showing that this is a use that's got somewhat of a sales floor component, but a pretty substantial in-house assembly product creation component as well. So there are a few parts of a judge-similar determination that I'd like to focus in on. Again, the C3 zoning district has a line in there that says the ZBA has a role in determining whether another use that comes in is similar to the permitted principal uses and similar to the intent of the district. So let's look at the intent of the district. You see some keywords here like this is to satisfy the needs of modern commercial development where access is entirely dependent on the automobile, activities function independently of pedestrian traffic. So you're looking for a place that allows for fluid vehicular circulation, ideally for pedestrian circulation too, but it's really built around the automobile. The uses exclude outdoor sales. What are some of the principal permitted uses in C3 zoning that they are making a case they might be similar to? Well, if you look at their examples, they show a meat market, they show a bakery, they of course show a place that sells alcohol as well. But within our zoning ordinance, you see a listing for things like indoor retail sales and service, food stores, grocery stores, meat markets, bakeries, coffee shops, delis, and restaurants. So throughout Walker, you can kind of see similar uses springing up where you have substantial production area, but also a sales floor area. Grand Rapids Cheesecake Company comes to mind on Alpine, where there's a bakery component. There's an overhead door where a lot of supplies are brought in, but there's also a small sales floor. Same thing with Honey Baked Ham over in the Green Ridge Shopping Center. So those are the kinds of uses that we would permit in this zoning district that you might think whether they link to this use or not. Now the third line is where information that is kind of being picked up ongoing, and I'll take responsibility to say that I did not dive into this part enough early on, is that we also need to look at ruling out other uses that this may be defined as in other zoning districts. So is this a primarily manufacturing use? If so, it's really not appropriate for C3 zoning. It's really appropriate for an industrial zoning district. Is it a bar? If that's the case, if it's primarily meant for entertainment and on-site consumption of alcohol, that's really something we only allow in Standale. The third line here is where I want to focus some more attention, and where the interpretation of the application ended up not being aligned with what is actually being proposed here, where we have most of the gross income here being for consumption of, or sale of alcoholic beverages. That's something we define pretty clearly as a liquor store, party store, convenience store, and is more appropriate in C4 zoning. Now, when I look at this, there's always background to the letter of the law and the spirit of the law, and I think it is important to get some more of the background of how this ordinance was created, to understand why we defined it this way, whether it meant to rule out, whether it meant to include all places that make their primary business from selling alcoholic beverages, and does that include beer the same way it includes liquor and wine, which of course have different licensing implications from the state of Michigan and things like that. Here we are strictly talking about artisanal beer, which is certainly a different product from liquor. But at the same time, there's an explicit definition in our zoning ordinance linked to commercial retail use where the majority of the gross income is from the sale of alcoholic beverages, and that is clearly linked only to the C4 zoning district. So that is going to inform one of my recommendations tonight. Ultimately, the review criteria should include stuff from these previous slides. Is it primarily commercial in nature? Is it on-site indoor sale of products, service, and exchange of goods? So kind of ruling in that, yes, it is a commercial use. Then the ruling out part, is it not a bar or nightclub? Is it not manufacturing for off-site distribution? And is it not liquor store, party store, convenience store? Are the manufacturing activities adequately limited and buffered? Is the concerns about noise, odor, vibration guarded and checked for? Is there accessible and safe vehicle circulation to and from the site? Is there adequate parking? Is there limits on outdoor sales? And is the sale of alcoholic products consistent with the city licensing policies that are administered by the city commission? Those are the things I think you should make an eventual decision based on. And things like, is there going to be odor from the grains of the spent grains of the product and things like that? Making sure that stuff's limited enough to say this is a reasonable use and a controlled enough use. But at the end of the day, we still have to go back and say whether this is ruling out that liquor store, party store, convenience store definition. And this is something that I just had a conversation with the applicant about late today, after your packets were out, sort of ongoing information. I don't think it was through any fault of the applicant. I think it's just more prying out some more of the information about what their business is that we stumbled upon this, and I think it's our role to figure this out. So my recommendation is that there are a few courses of action you can take as a ZBA. You can lay out some facts tonight and really tease out some things about this case that separate it from especially that liquor store use that we talked about. My recommendation would be to allow me particularly some more time to do some fact finding, get into the spirit of the ordinance that was passed that really confined that definition to the C4 zoning. And then the potential outcomes could be that you go ahead and make a decision tonight. You could decide on the next meeting agenda after I do a little bit more research, sort of the longest path case scenario is going to be that this is more appropriately rezoned as C4 and subject to a special use permit as what we'd call liquor store, convenience store, party store, which would involve a planning commission review. And I put some tentative dates on this slide. We never know dates exactly, but these are regular meeting dates that those things may be taken up at. So I guess my advice to the ZBA is get some facts out there, open and close the public hearing. I certainly think that's a legitimate thing to do. Hear from Mr. Smith about his business plan, hear about how it might be a good fit with the neighborhood. But I still think that it's important to get some more background information that links this or doesn't link this to that ordinance that restricts party stores to C4 zoning. So I would offer up that this should be tabled based on that recommendation. The ultimate decision would be based on some findings that I have in a motion sheet. And if we get closer to that point, I can talk through these. But perhaps it's a good idea to start by opening a public hearing and getting some more facts from the applicant.
Okay, can I get a request to open the meeting?
I'll make a motion to open the hearing.
Support.
Okay. All in favor? Open the
Aye.
meeting?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, meeting's open. Okay, let's start with the lady who came up before. Just need your name and
Yep.
address.
It's Mary Beth Hendrickson Scheid. I do live right across the street at 3384 Remembrance Road on the corner. I just have some concerns with what's going in there because I'm concerned about what's going on in that whole strip there. The place next door to this one, that they're not selling anything out of there. There's not even a sign that says what they are. The house next to that is vacant and empty. Nobody kept the grass even cut with that until recently. Next to that is the Latin House No Name restaurant, again with no name on it or anything going on. So I'm just, as a resident, as a homeowner, I'm feeling like that whole side is kind of like, I don't know, not something you want across the street from you. That's not being, even the builder, Ben had his roof not fixed, though, and he was a builder. And so, and that's what I have to look at out my front window, and that's what I have to see happening. And so I am concerned with the tasting possibility too later on, because that is later on, and who knows what will happen with that. Like, that to me is kind of out there a little bit. And then the hours, like, they're not going to have tastings after 7 on a Friday. Like, that seems like that wouldn't be right. So then would times change? And then all of a sudden, my grandkids are over and people are coming in and out of there like it's a bar. So to me, it's like the three things are all that they aren't supposed to be, kind of feel like they are already. Those things, they're manufacturing, they're selling, plus they're going to have tastings and a kind of a bar like, I don't know what, as far as how much tastings will be for a bar situation, but that's not kind of really what I was looking forward to going into that building when Ben put it up for sale. So those are my concerns just in the whole
Okay.
scope of things. So
All right, maybe he'll answer some of them when he comes up. So, is there anyone else that'd like to make any comments? Oh, okay. Okay, Mr. Smith.
Hello,
Hi there.
thank you all for having me. My associate, Brad Lawrence, couldn't make it. He's actually having some health issues in the hospital, kind of out of nowhere. So fortunately, it's just me tonight. I don't know if you want me to just kind of address some of her concerns first.
That would
or-
be great, and we'll kind of ad-lib from there, I guess. So.
Sure. So I guess I'll take a step back and just talk about the model in general. So 1983 Brewing Company is an idea that's based off breweries that are out east in eastern states, where the primary focus is on beer, where traditionally in Grand Rapids you'll stumble upon brew pubs, which sell food and sell beer on site. Some of them sell cans in a store to go or distribute. So out east, what they're doing is creating a more artisanal premium beer offering where it's sold as fresh as possible directly from the brewery. No food sales, no additional product sales, with the exception of some merchandise of beer glasses and things like of that nature. But the primary focus is the artisanal craft beer. And the beer out east, in my mind, and I know I'm biased being a beer lover, but they're doing some of the best beers right now in the country. Not to take away from Grand Rapids, because there's definitely some great things going on here as well. So it would be a unique model to Grand Rapids, Michigan, where there's really no example I can tell you to say, go here and this is what you're going to expect. So in terms of a daily week, and I think it was on another slide that Dan created, the actual production would be Monday and Tuesday, so no sales on those days. Wednesday would be more canning. Thursday, Friday would be just retail sales, limited, I believe, to from 10 o'clock in the morning to 7 at night. And Saturday would be from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. sales. And then down the road, if sampling was approved or a tasting room was approved, we would do just on-premise consumption sales just on Saturday. We have no desire to be a full operating bar. It kind of turns us off to have that full staff and just the additional overhead and complexity to a business, when at the end of the day our primarily, focus is producing a phenomenal product, local craft artisanal product to sell to the community and sell it as fresh as possible and get it in their hands so they can consume it at home, camping, at an event, and so forth. So I don't know if that helps make you feel more comfortable knowing that it's going to be extremely limited hours, and we have no desire to sell during the week and have late hours, because we don't want to work 100-hour work weeks. Because right now we're going to be a very nimble staff, just myself and Brad Lawrence working and basically doing everything I just described throughout the week. Not sure if I missed anything there, but.
All right. Okay, then I'm going to turn it over to the board. They'll have some questions for you, I'm sure, so.
What attracts you to that site?
Well, I was born on the west side. I grew up on Westview, which is kind of around the corner, Collindale, 7th Street. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that. It is Grand Rapids. So west side is kind of home to me. My business partner, Brad Lawrence, he recently relocated from Jenison to Walker. He grew up a few blocks away from me as well. So he actually lives, I guess, a quarter mile or a half mile away from the site. But we do have, I guess, an affinity to Walker. My wife graduated from Kennewa, so we do know the area well. We have family in the area. And I guess we've driven up and down Remembrance Road for quite some time, as well as Standale. It's kind of, I guess, the shopping areas that I would frequently go to. And when this specific property came on the market, it was the perfect size for the small batch artisanal brewing we want to move forward with, as well as the parking. It just kind of had all the different pieces that we're looking for as far as the sales portion, production portion, parking portion. So right now there's not a ton of commercial properties on the market, and this one kind of hits on a lot of the things we were looking for.
Your process is in-house? Everything is done in-house?
Yes, everything's done in-house. We've been working on a process for over 2 years. I mean, we would consider it proprietary. It's not necessarily how everyone else is doing it. It's kind of a combination of different techniques and things we've picked up from educating ourselves and kind of traveling across the country and even the world in that case, trying to perfect our recipes and our process. So it does take a little bit longer to brew with our process versus a typical brewery where it takes 1 to 2 weeks. It takes us 3 weeks from start to finish.
What is your byproduct of this process? I mean, you end up with something left over, I would assume.
Yep. So to kind of walk through the brewing process, you start off the process with grains, which is considered malt, and you add not boiling water, but very hot water to it, and that sits in a kettle for an amount of time. And from there, you water it with additional water, and then you eventually get all the sugars out of the grain, and that's the spent grain. And then the liquid ends up in a large kettle, which is boiled for about 1 hour. So there is steam from that, which is vented straight up. So a few hours a week, there will be just steam coming from the roof that'll be vented into the air. Outside of that, there should be no remnants of anything escaping the building. So after the spent grain is spent or used, it will just be stored internally in the building. So it is not stored outside.
Okay.
It shouldn't have any smell to, I mean, any even of the customers coming in. No one will know it's there.
So even the steam is, doesn't have any odor or anything like that then?
I guess you can kind of compare it to maybe like a bakery where it smells like bread. So it's just
Okay.
like the grain sugar's boiling for an hour. So you might smell some bread notes.
Okay.
Can you help me understand the three businesses that you laid out, Sobe Meats, Nantucket Baking Company, and Aslan Beer Company? They're similar models and layouts. Are those intention that they were judged similar decisions where they were C3, something zoned differently and changed for their business operations? And then secondarily, I guess, kind of walk me through those three and why that you think they're relevant to our decision.
Sure. So we see ourselves as an artisanal business where our sole focus is perfecting our products. If you think of a bakery, you go to a bakery to get the best loaf, the freshest loaf. You can get a loaf of bread at Meijer, but it's going to be a mass-produced product. It's going to, taste okay, but if you want to get the best bread out there, you're going to go to the local bakery and get it fresh that was, taken out of the oven an hour before that. So that was our rationale for using that, I guess, example. And then looking at Sobe Meats similarly, where if you want to get the best meat product, you're going to go to your local butcher, the freshest meat, the best cuts, freshest kielbasa versus a Johnson brat. I buy Johnson brat still, but there's a time and place for all these different types of premium products. And then the Aslan Brewing Company that's out of state, and I had to apologize because when Dan did his research, he found all these photos where it looks like they've expanded most recently into kind of a larger, not brew pub, but it looks like they had a larger on-site, on-premise drinking area that looked a little bit more chaotic than what we're envisioning for the property. But that model only sells beer, and they do beer releases weekly that sell out fairly fast. And again, it's all about having the freshest beer sold locally, not distributed. So the other idea is we don't want our product being distributed to different holders of the product, where our beer could sit in a warehouse, get warm for a full day, and those temperature shifts affect the product quality largely, larger than most people think with beer. And then secondly, it's the freshness factor. Again, if we distribute, it could sit there for weeks. And some of the products that we will be producing, we're going to say, drink it immediately or within a week. So if you're outside of that range, it changes the product, changes the quality. So again, we're playing off of artisanal. As fastly as we brew it and can it, we want it to go out the door so the customers can enjoy it, and we want to, give the best experience locally to the surrounding areas to customers that would come to purchase the product.
So if I can summarize my understanding, just to make sure I'm hearing you correctly. So I'm hearing those three businesses kind of do best of breed product, best of service, boutique, almost like very specific
Yes.
to their business models and their business plan differentiation.
Thank you for summarizing it.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
Dan, I got a question. The houses that are on Remembrance, are those in the C3 zone or are those zoned single family?
It's sort of a mosaic. In between Ripens and the next street to the southeast that I forget the name, I think the front halves of all those properties are C3. Now, when you go across the street, I think it changes, and the resident from across the street, that may be a or SA single-family zone lot. It's sort of, if you look at the zoning map for Remembrance Road, it's sort of a patchwork.
This lot is part C3 and part residential?
That's right.
Yeah.
There's a image on the slide, a couple slides above here, that shows very roughly what we're dealing with. And I don't know for sure, but when I look at that, it seems like the powers that be, when our first zoning map was made in the early 1960s for the city of Walker, when it was incorporated, they said, these are close proximity. We know there's always been sort of commercial mix of uses on Remembrance Road that used to be the old Muskegon rail line. That's really close to the backyards of these plats that came in, so let's make sure there's sort of a built-in buffer, and that's the purpose of having some of that split zoning there, is to have a buffer where you can't use that portion of property for commercial use. So it kind of works as a buffer, but that's the way it is for all those properties on the north side of Remembrance, almost all those properties on the north side of Remembrance in this stretch.
What's the master plan for this salt and pepper of zoning?
It's called Village Commercial, and it's sort of a category that was made for Remembrance Road, the way I look at it, because it refers to this area being allowed to continue growing as a mix of industrial, office, commercial, and residential uses, as long as they aren't harming each other, more or less. It's sort of saying status quo of this being a mix of uses is okay, as long as the uses continue to grow in a responsible way. So nominally a commercial designation, but it grabs a bunch of different types of use.
How much do you expect to brew? If a small batch is a barrel, roughly, how many barrels, say, per week do you expect to brew?
We would like to do 2 to 4 different beers a week. So we'll have a number of fermenters that will allow us to brew a batch, and then going back to it takes 3 weeks. It would sit in that fermenter for 3 weeks before we could can it. So ideally we would have 2 to 4 different beers available per week. So the 2 brew days would allow us to brew 2 full days where we could brew up to 3 times a day. So we could brew up to 6 barrels a week. That would fit in the fermenters that we plan on purchasing. So depending on demand, it would range from, I guess, a minimum of 2 barrels to 4 barrels on average. But again, it would depend on the demand, because we don't want to have products sitting, because again, that would deteriorate the quality.
Of that, roughly, what percentage do you think would be on-site consumption or tasting?
Well, depending on if we're approved for on-site consumption, again, it would be Saturday only. I would, in my current business plan, if that was approved, it would be at 10% of total volume. That's currently built into the business plan. I would guess it would be 10% or could even be less. If we sell out in cans, we really don't necessarily have a need to have the open tap room. That's more of a nice to have for local residents that would like to sit at the property and have that experience versus going home with it. And it would also allow them to sample and try the product. Since we're not distributing, that kind of gives us a challenge of getting our name out there and getting, I guess, first customers to come in.
Do you plan to distribute? Will you sell this at other retail outlets? Or?
At this time, that's not part of the plan. And with the brewing license that we're going to get from the state, I believe it wouldn't allow us to distribute.
Do you charge for the sampling?
I'm still trying to confirm, I guess, from laws and regulations what we're allowed and not allowed to do, but ideally we would give out free samples and just small tastings. I mean, we would not by any means give out a cup of beer. It would be 1 to 2 ounce little glasses. And depending again on what we're approved for, it'd be nice to be able to do that on Thursdays and Fridays while we're just doing the retail store, and then Saturdays as well.
What type of advertising do you envision, or how do you envision selling your business or making it known that you're there, things like that?
Well, the beer community is very strong online, so socially driven. Instagram, Twitter, just having a Facebook page, having a .com website, which will have all the above, is a necessity, especially when we're going to be releasing different beers each week. We need to let the customers know what will be available, and kind of modeling after what we've seen out east. A lot of the notifications are just sent out via social. So Instagram and Twitter will let the customers know what's coming. And secondly, beer festivals, I guess local festivals as well, where you can have a booth up and get in front of customers or individuals that you wouldn't necessarily come across because they're not driving down Remembrance Road or they've never heard of you. So a combination of those two items would, I guess, be the bulk of it.
What type of signage would you put up outside the building, or would you put signage up?
Everything we want to do is we want to be very tasteful and high, I guess more of a premium look and feel. So we don't want to have anything gaudy, no flashing lights or of that nature. I guess right now what I envisioned was just having something on the front of the building that might just be a little bit, what do I want to say, like inconspicuous, where it's just like 1983, where someone might be like, what's that? So it's not, again, like a huge sign on the wall. So hopefully our product can speak for itself, and the word can spread that we have a fantastic product in Walker, Michigan, and the word will spread organically.
So the way I understand it, you're basically talking retail sales, not wholesale? Is that
Yes, so I believe by wholesales you mean like selling to a distributor or a beer store.
To other commercial businesses?
Correct. We would sell solely at the site. So
Because you're talking about not wanting your product stored in a warehouse or shipped long distances to change the product. So I'm assuming it's local retail.
correct.
And are you going to have it permissible for people to come in, say with like these growlers or their own containers and purchase and take it? Or is it going to be packaged for them to purchase?
As of right now, it's just going to be the cans that we can, and sampling / tasting on Saturdays among approval.
And for your raw materials, what is your storage process?
For the
For
grains, the hops.
Hops and stuff.
So there's a number of rooms existing on the property that we could easily just convert to a storage room, but the malts themselves, or the grains, don't have to be temperature regulated or anything. The hops and the yeast need to be held in a fridge, so we will have fridges for those ingredients specifically, but the bags themselves, which are roughly 40 pounds, will just sit stacked.
I'm just concerned about rodents.
We don't plan on having any doors left open or even,
Yeah, but it don't take a very big crack for mice to get in, especially if you have a lot of grain there.
again, there are separate rooms where I guess we could take additional precautions if need be, so it wouldn't the building structure itself has everything kind of contained in different rooms right now, so it's not a big open layout by any means. So the front,
It's not only for the neighborhood, it's for your business, because you're not gonna want rodents in your.
agreed, absolutely.
Because that's not gonna add to the flavor.
That would be a nightmare.
Okay.
How often during the week, it says here 26-foot truck, roughly the size that you'd be using. How often during the week would a truck come in with new materials and take out the old materials?
The deliveries would be once a month, so that truck, that would be the largest size truck that would do a delivery, and that would be once a month. The spent grains that would be a new process for me, but from my understanding, like a local farmer will come pick it up with just like a pickup truck, and we'll take it out of the building and they'll load it up and take it away. And I guess I don't have an exact answer on how often that would happen. I wouldn't assume it would be more than once a week or every other week.
Have you done this before somewhere?
Not on a large scale, no.
Okay.
I've been a home brewer for a number of years, but
Okay.
never at a commercial scale or what I'm calling a small batch.
Just wondering where you get your knowledge from, because it seems like you got a pretty good handle on it, so.
I've lived in quite a few different cities throughout the country and explored quite a few different countries, and I've been to a number of brewery tours and have had a small obsession with just talking beer and just loving everything about it. So whenever I get a chance, I lived in Chicago, and they officially have more breweries per capita than anywhere else in the country right now. So even though Grand Rapids is Brewing City, USA, they're still nowhere near what the city of Chicago is doing. But yes, I love everything about it.
Anybody got anything else they want to add? Okay, can I get a motion to close the hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the hearing.
I'll support.
Support. All in favor of closing the hearing? Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing's closed.
So I have a permission, can we debate this a little bit? So I have maybe a general comment, a couple of comments, might not make me a popular man on this bench, but I strongly believe that they've got a great business plan. I really do. I think he laid out from a business plan perspective, differentiation, first to market, ways to get out there.